who will be helping us understand the state of affairs and what is being discussed behind the corridors. But first, let me give you a preamble. Over the last 5 years, South African exports to Uganda have seen a marginal decrease from $2.1 billion worth in 2018 to $1.7 billion in 2022, while South African imports from Uganda grew from $102 million in 2008 to $304 million in 2002. It's upon this backdrop that both countries are nearing travel visa waiver as the private sector in both continue to call on the two governments to work towards the removal of all non-tariff barriers to trade. Damali Ssali is a trade facilitation expert. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Bring us up to speed with the state of trade first and foremost between Uganda and South Africa.
Thank you. I think, in my opinion, the trade relations between the two countries are going on pretty well, pretty good, at a good state. And this is exemplified by the two events that have happened this year.
Yeah.
In February this year, we saw at least 150 exporters, Ugandan exporters, travel to South Africa to meet their counterparts, the private sector in South Africa. And they went along with the public sector. All government agencies that are involved in trade facilitation traveled, actually, with the business sector to South Africa. And there they met the business community, they met the government agencies. With a lot of discussions were around opportunities that can be exploited by the two countries and the two business communities, the challenges and where we can leverage. That event was actually very successful in that the two presidents, the president of South Africa and the president of Uganda, actually attended that to hear those discussions. Secondly, 2 weeks ago, we had the South African business community plus
coming over to Uganda.
Public government agencies in South Africa coming to Uganda again to further that relationship, those trade discussions.
That's right.
And we also saw Ugandan businesses and the public sector meet again. These are two major events in 1 year. So that shows you that these relations are actually very strong and they're taken very seriously both by the public sector and the private sector in the two countries. However, we still have one stickling point. The stickling point is that the visa restrictions on Ugandans traveling to South Africa. South Africans can't enter Uganda easily, in that if you're any citizen of South Africa can actually come into Uganda easily to do business, which is a great thing. We need the same for Ugandan business people to be able to travel to South Africa easily to do business. If you look at our comparators, if you look at Tanzania, Tanzanian citizens can easily travel to South Africa for at least 90 days without any restrictions. If you look at Kenya, it's the same. Kenyan citizens can travel to South Africa without any visa restrictions for at least 90 days. Now, that in a way puts the Ugandan business community at a little bit of a disadvantage. And this disadvantage actually is a disadvantage to both countries, because if one party can't travel, it means we can't catalyze all those opportunities. This good relationship can't be fully exploited to create basically new trade and new money.
Okay. Yes. So on the part of South Africa, what are the pain points when it comes to not wanting to be able to put the kind of arrangement that any other person in Uganda wants in terms of accessing South African market or even traveling for that matter? What is their issue?
I won't speak for South Africans, but what I understand,
You've heard their complaints.
I'm not an immigration expert. However, what I understand is that whenever it comes to these visa restrictions, two governments have to talk. They negotiate, then they agree.
Okay.
So from my understanding is that South Africans, of course, have their requirements. If you're going to get these visa restrictions uplifted, any country has certain requirements that this other country, say Uganda, has to comply with. And what I understand is that these requirements were given to the Ugandan government, and the Ugandan government is in talks and negotiations with them. So those need to be concluded by the governments, because it's a government discussion. But if I'm going to, if I can paint this picture further to you, is that if you look at the European continent, intra-Europe trade stands at 70%, because it's easy for European citizens to travel across European countries without restrictions. And then you come to Africa, intra-Africa trade is at 15%, because it's difficult for African citizens to travel across the continent easily because of these visa restrictions.
That's right.
So that affects us. So in effect, trade, intra-Africa trade, could be multiplied by 4 times or 5 times if only visa restrictions are removed. So now if I move back to Uganda, South Africa, specific example, Uganda, South Africa, those trade numbers you've just given to us, South Africa could quadruple their trade, their exports to Uganda, if Ugandans easily travel to them, and so will Uganda also quadruple. So it's a win-win if the two people, if the two citizens of the two countries are able to travel. And these are facts, because studies have shown that if people are able to travel across, they're able to do knowledge exchange, capacity building, they're able to do business-to-business meetings, they're able to do these negotiations. You see, these trade deals, if I'm a tour agent in Uganda, Damali Ssali Tours and Travel.
That's right.
And I want to enter the South African market, the easiest market entry strategy for me would be to joint venture with a tour and travel company that is South Africa. But that can't happen if I can't travel to South Africa and see them and have an actual face-to-face meeting with them, because business is based on trust. I can't trust a travel agent that I've just Googled and I talk to on Zoom.
That's right.
No, this is serious money. This is my cash that is going to be affected. It's my reputation that's going to be affected.
Right.
So that's not something you do over a Zoom meeting. That you do over Google. I must travel to South Africa, see these people, do my due diligence. And this due diligence from, say, Damali Ssali Tours and Travel is done by Damali Ssali. It is not done by KPMG. We are not a big conglomerate. I'm a small tour and travel. I can't afford KPMG.
That's
so
right.
I have to go do my due diligence myself. I have to go build this relationship, this trust relationship with this owner of this tour agency in South Africa. Now, if I catalyze that, I can do a joint venture with them, where you send me tourists from South Africa to come to Uganda with me, and I pay you a commission. I send you tourists from Uganda, I pay you a commission. That's, now imagine, that's part of trade is something we haven't actually catalyzed.
That's right.
Because people can't travel. If I don't know, Damali Ssali Tours and Travel, and I don't know what can be offered in South Africa. If I get a Canadian tourists who want to come to Uganda to see mountain gorillas, I can't offer them that, you know what, with a 4-hour flight to South Africa using Uganda Airlines, you can easily go see Table Mountain. I don't even know there's Table Mountain, you see? And yet, if I had a joint venture with a South African company, I can offer that. So that is new business that I've actually created for South Africa. And it's the same. When the South African company that I've joint ventured with gets domestic tourists or foreign tourists, they can tell them, by the way, with a 5-hour flight to Uganda, you can also see the mountain gorillas. That is new. Imagine, that's new money created between the two economies that currently can't be done because of these restrictions.
Okay, the private sector in that stead seems to be shortchanged on the amount of, or rather volumes of trade between the two countries. Will be telling us, or rather painting us a picture on exactly where we would be, for example, in the last 5 years if there were no visa restrictions and we were able to smoothly go into South Africa. But that is after this very short break. Do stay with us. I'll be back with Damali Ssali, a trade facilitation. All right, welcome back from that break. We are taking note of the visa regime between Uganda and South Africa. There have been calls on the South African government by Ugandan business persons and other Ugandans, for that matter, who may be just traveling to South Africa for the regime there to ensure that it's easy for us to be able to go to South Africa. But the business imperative is overarching, and there is need for more concerted effort to ensure that Ugandan business persons can be able to relate easily with their counterparts in South Africa. And with me here in studio is Damali Ssali, a trade facilitation expert who knows what the things can be if these restrictions are waived. I'm inclined to ask the question, could visa restrictions be the only bone of contention when it comes to trade for Ugandans who want to be in South Africa, or there are other challenges?
Yes, there are other challenges. Of course, the first challenge that we talk about is the visa restrictions. It's because business is done by people. We always think trade is about me exporting my coffee. The coffee doesn't go by itself. You know, I need to have been there, done the deal, found the distributor. So the person actually matters on who is going to actually export. So trade facilitation primarily starts with the free movement of people, because the goods don't move themselves, they don't send themselves. So that's why we look at the free movement of people first. And also, if you think about trading services, if I'm giving you tourism, it is a service, but you can apply it to a law firm, a Ugandan law firm that wants to do business in South Africa with a South African law firm, accounting firm, anything to do with services. The youth in Uganda are so much into create the creative sector.
Yeah.
If I'm a content creator, Ugandan content creator, and I want to partner with a South African content creator, or want to find a South African company that can hire me as a content creator for their business or for their marketing in Uganda, I need to be able to travel. It's the human being that actually travels.
That's
so
right.
when you talk about trade facilitation, primarily you must look at the movement of people. That's important. They are the ones who agree deals, they're the ones who negotiate, they're the ones who come up with ideas and catalyze and do their market research to be able to do that business. But of course, that's not the only challenge that there is, but it's the first challenge that ideally you should sort out, because it will help the other challenges to be resolved.
Great.
Some of the other challenges, of course, that are affected is South Africa, of course, is far, so the cost of freight, the cost per kilogram of freight. If I want to export maybe a ton of coffee, the cost of transport is actually very high. So when the business summits actually have been going on, the good thing is that Uganda Airlines has actually been part of these discussions.
Okay.
Say, for example, the one that happened in February, yes. The one that happened in February.
Cargo?
Yes, because it does cargo. So the business community was like, I want to export my pineapples, I want to export my coffee, but the cost per kilogram of exporting to South Africa is very expensive, but we do have a national airline. Can you actually subsidize it for Ugandans? Because you're a national carrier.
That's a
and
good
then
one.
you can help us, export more, but then the Ugandan trade balance of trade is improved. We get more reserves in foreign exchange. So by you subsidizing the cost of freight for Ugandan exporters who are exporting this cargo stuff to South Africa can be higher. And also they have, I think they committed to look at that cost of freight also. But then the other usual trade facilitation challenge is usually around the mutual recognition of standards.
Yeah.
So say UNBS stamps my pineapples, my packaged pineapples as meeting. Does South Africa recognize them? Does it accept it? There's currently, there are plans, I think there are talks to have mutual recognition agreements between the two bureaus of standards.
Bodies, yeah.
And once that's done, of course, it will make it easier, because now, at the moment, UNBS will have to certify them, but then South African has to be certified again. So that mutual recognition agreement has to easily work. Then the other big thing is around customs. So there are two revenue authorities, because customs, of course, control the actual export of goods. So
that's pretty much responsible for the tariff barriers.
Exactly. So you must be able, the two customs agencies must also be working in tandem. The beauty about it is that Uganda Revenue Authority is electronic. Most of their services is actually electronic. So is South Africa, so they can easily do interfaces. So that if I'm exporting my stuff, I just do everything online, and when it gets there, it's accepted because Customs Uganda has cleared it, and it's easy to comply. So those are the other major trade facilitation areas that have to be addressed. But I want to emphasize the point is that the movement of people is the first number one. Please go ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's wind up and focus a little bit more on the movement of people. When you are in Uganda, you get to understand that many youth go to South Africa. Now, what they do there could be speculative in nature, but the business is booming, whatever they go to do. And that is, of course, people moving. What does South Africa need most from Uganda in terms of product range, or we are exporting what we can?
I think we have actually a lot to export. The numbers you've just seen over there. We grew our exports to South Africa from $100 million to 300. That's it.
Hide and skins.
Yes, hides and skins. We have our coffee. We have all these agro products that we are exporting. We have tourism that we're not fully exploiting. Actually, it's not fully exploited, not to the extent that we could. So we're already exporting those things, but not to the extent that we could. In the preamble, I told you that if movement of people is eased, you quadruple your trade volumes, and not just by one side, because also trade should not be a one side wins all, but the movement of people enables the quadrupling of trade. Uganda's exports to South Africa, and so will South Africans' exports to Uganda. South Africa, of course, is already very much, South African businesses are already very much involved in Uganda. You have the massive telecoms, you have MTN, you have ABSA, you have Stambik, you have Excom. They are actually quite heavily in the Ugandan economy, which is a great thing. But it could be more even for them. It could be more, as long as Ugandans are able to travel. Trade facilitation studies have shown that the number one catalyst for trade to quadruple is for people to move.
Damali Ssali is a trade facilitation expert, and very good perspective and submissions with regard to the trade regime between Uganda and South Africa. Many thanks for making time.
Thank you.
And that will do it for this edition of Morning at NTV. It's been a pleasure having your company as always, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow sharing a sentiment, including the fact that we want FDC officials to be able to make it here in their numbers. If we can have 4 of them, Salam Musumba, Robert Centenary, Francis Mwijuche, and Patrick Oboy Amriat, then we shall have a discussion on our hands that the nation might not want to miss. We are working on that, and I can promise we shall be bringing it to you in the days to come. That will do it for today. I'm Chris Higenyi. Have yourselves a lovely Wednesday.